Seven, six, five, four, three, two, one.
Welcome to the May 25th edition of CBD Talk Podcast. Today's guest is cannabis expert Paul Bregman, MD, board certified by the American Academy of Cannabinoid Medicine. And here's our host, Harley D'Amico, to get things started.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to CBD Talk tonight. This is your host, Harley D'Amico. Tonight's guest is a medical professional. His name is Dr. Paul Bregman. How are you doing tonight, Paul?
Paul, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Oh, glad. So how
Hi
are you
there,
doing
Paul.
tonight?
Good. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you now. So I was just, introducing you a little bit. Can you kind of give us a little bit of background on a little bit about your history, what brought you into the cannabis industry?
Sure. I just want to make sure. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, my name is Paul Bregman. I'm a medical doctor with an MD degree, and I graduated from medical school and went into diagnostic radiology, and I did that for a number of years, and then I was also doing mental health advocacy because while I was doing radiology and specializing in that, I also was thinking about going back and becoming a psychiatrist, so I was doing mental health advocacy, and through my work in mental health advocacy led me over into some training or introduction into cannabis medicine, both for personal use and the science of it. And then I started doing cannabis evaluations in 2007 after being tutored by a retired cardiothoracic surgeon. And
so
that
when
began
you say,
my career.
So when you say cannabis evaluations, so you're saying that you were one of the doctors could come in and see and approach and talk to about their issues, and you would decide if it was medically necessary for them to have to use cannabis?
Right. That part of my career started in 2007, doing evaluations if they met the qualifying conditions back in the early years of 2007, between 2007 and 2010. You have to remember the law was on the books here in Colorado since the year 2000, and there were 5,000 patients. But when Obama came into office, or when the change really came about in Colorado, was 2007, and you went from 5,000 patients to 125,000 patients. And that's when doctors were doing a lot of evaluations.
Nice.
So
what were some of the most common things that people were getting prescribed for?
Well, people came in, most of the people that were coming in were already using cannabis, and now they were using it. They wanted to use things for legal reasons, but most of it was still pain and opiate use. And so I would say 80 to 90% of the patients were coming in with chronic pain uses. That was and that's what the biggest one, qualifying condition even today. So
right, I understand that. Because they're still working on accepting certain conditions to even be qualified, even still to this day. I know that there's a lot of lobbying going on right now for allowing veterans the use of cannabis for a lot of the chronic pain that they get from injuries during their service. There's a lot of proven benefits with PTSD and things of that sort. But to get your medical card, a condition as of right now cannot be PTSD. Is that correct?
Right. That was voted down, I think, last year. I mean, the Veterans Association just a few weeks ago, I think, authorized their physicians to talk about cannabis use to the veterans and the veterans hospitals, so that it's something that so they can at least talk about. But as far as a qualifying condition, yes, Colorado still does not have PTSD on the list.
Yeah, that's something that I've really been pushing for. the DEA actually approved a study that they got approved for 72 veterans, according to the member that I talked to at a Grow for Vets event 2 weeks ago. But they're actually going to pay us a 300-time payment so people can actually use some of that money to purchase the cannabis. They're not going to provide any product, but then they're still fine-tuning everything. But as of right now, what they're going to do is they're going to have like a monitor bracelet that's going to monitor, blood pressure and sleep patterns and things of that sort. So it's starting to get that movement, but I just don't understand why they can't approve these conditions, if it's really working for people, and there's so many medical professionals out there that agree. In your opinion, what's the best way of moving forward with that?
Well, they finally are going to have some research studies that are out there addressing PTSD. So you're going to have the gold standard of what doctors like and the government wants of double-blind studies. So that's coming. It's all about research, and it's about politics, and it's about lobbyists and the drug war. It's a complex issue, but things are moving slowly, and research is going to drive it.
I agree. The major thing that I think, another thing, is dosing. Companies need to start really focusing on their dosing and accurate testing, because that's one thing that's still all over the place is the testing. I think that's one thing that they really need to start researching first.
And no question about it. And that's coming. I mean, that's the future of cannabis medicine, is going to be more precise dosing protocols. You're ultimately going to see, probably within the next year, a real premier grade of tinctures that are going to be cannabinoid specific with certain mixes of terpenes that will go and be used. Some will be better for certain types of pain. Some will be better for certain types of inflammation. Some will be better for certain types of sleep. Some will be better for certain types of anxiety. And you go on and go forth with regards to better products and testing.
Yeah, that's what I tell a lot of people, too, is like this research is coming in more and more. We're finding, more uses for the different cannabinoids and yet on the terpene profiles that people are just now really getting into. And that's how I kind of see the future of it being, kind of isolated cannabinoids that are, used to treat certain symptoms, because they're all separate molecules that do separate things. And I think that that's one thing that's very important for the education process that people need to understand first, is that they're completely different. Can you kind of explain to us a little bit about how the CBD is different than, say, THC?
Well, the different molecules that come from the cannabis plant. The cannabis plant, as you know, has maybe about 85 different cannabinoids, has maybe 100 or so terpenes and flavonoids. So when we look at the medicinal effects of cannabis, we're harking back to the entourage effect, where all of those things are better than the sum of the parts is much better than just an individual molecule. You can have dominant this and dominant that, but you need the natural plant, and that's what GW Pharmaceutical does with Sativex and Epidiolex and things like that, as opposed to synthetic THC, such as Marinol, which hasn't been shown to be as effective as the whole plant. And that gets into the whole question of hemp versus cannabis. The whole question about hemp versus cannabis is that's all well and good to have CBD-rich hemp and less than 0.3% THC, but for a lot of people, that may not be working enough concentration for their own ailments. And so that's why people who suffer in states that don't have cannabis laws are going to be in states where they have low THC laws or hemp laws, shall we say. They may not get the same benefit of cannabis, full cannabis states.
Yeah, because from what I've seen, it's the more of that full spectrum that you have that's closer to, the organic plant and the concentrate, then the more bioavailable it seems to the body, the more consistent effect that it's seeming to have over the isolated products? Because from my understanding, the isolate products, they're isolates, but they have to have some type of additive to get them to crystallize or to do those types of things. Is that right?
Well, I think they always have an additive, and I think, but the additive, you have to use the whole plant for the most beneficial effects. But if you can't get the whole plant into the body, it's not going to have the greatest effect either. So again, the driving agent or how you get it in to get the whole entourage effect is the moment of truth. I mean, you can isolate and do fractionalize and do things that you will, but again, you're going to get back to mixture of the whole plant.
I understand. So we got to when you were writing prescriptions for cannabis. Can you kind of continue on a little bit from there? Because I think we stopped out at around 2007.
So 2007 to 2010, I did about 3,500 evaluations. And then in 2010, I left and I joined forces to become a consultant with the edible company Edipure at that moment in time in its conception. And they were noted for consistency and of dose, and the fact that 10 milligrams meant 10 milligrams. So that was unique. So I was involved with them for 3 years. And after that, I've done some consulting and mostly focusing on information resource as well as patient education, bud tender education, and education, because the dispensaries really in Colorado really are the pharmacies of the industry, and they should be somewhere along the line required to have some sort of education to be able to dispense this product.
I agree, because the bud tenders.
That's what I've been doing. Yeah.
The bud tenders are the ones welcoming people into that industry that have been completely blind for so long. So I agree with you. I think that it's key that those bud tenders and those store managers need to be the most educated. And I'm finding that, like, on the rec side, that's not always the case because they're hiring employees as any other business would. So I think that that's one thing that really needs to start being standardized is some type of educational program for the bud tenders and things of that sort. So I'm glad to hear that you were really doing that when you were out here. I just wish I'd seen a lot more of it. And speaking for Edipure, I'm out here in Colorado. Edipure is an amazing company. They're one of the companies that have stayed consistent. They stayed around the entire time. There's a lot of companies that, come into the industry and then they disappear and they go back and forth. Edipure is one of those companies that is always consistent with the same products. Everything is always the same.
And so I think there's only going to be refinement and more purity and more testing of cannabis products as we move forward. And you're going to see advancements so that people who may have sleep disturbances, they're going to be able to find products that have more CBN in them, so they won't have to simply rely on THC to fall asleep. CBN combination with THC will be a strong component. So that's what I'm talking about with regards to being able to tailor the products to the ailment at this point in time. And regarding education, I don't know. It's a matter where businesses have to realize that an educated consumer and bud tender is good for business as well.
Right, I fully agree. So, if I'm understanding correctly, you're out in Michigan now, correct?
No, I'm in Denver.
Oh, you're out in Denver. Oh, okay, gotcha. So, when you first started getting into writing the prescriptions and everything like that.
Yeah, you don't write prescriptions. Let me correct you. It's an evaluation. If you wrote a prescription, if you write an evaluation, you can write a prescription for Marinol, but you can't write a prescription. There's no prescription for a Schedule I drug like marijuana, cannabis. So you're just doing an evaluation and a recommendation.
Understand. What's it going to take for them to for it to actually cross over and be considered a prescription like everything else, because that's where, a lot of people run into the problems, when they ask about, is insurance going to help with this or is insurance going to help with that? Do you see cannabis crossing over into that part of society anytime soon?
Not until you can put in, not until you're routinely putting it in a capsule form and the doctor or the doctors who are specialists can recommend 5 milligrams, 10 milligrams, something like that, and it can be more scientific in a capsule form and things like that. It may be rescheduled and more research will be open, whether it's rescheduled to a Marinol's a 3, so at least it should be a 2 or a 3 or a 4 or a 5, but as it's been recommended. But many times, I don't think it's going, if you do reschedule it, then the question becomes the people who are usually only allowed to dispense drugs are pharmacists, and obviously I don't know what they're going to do with the problem of selling cannabis in dispensaries without a pharmacist there. Like, pharmacists are required to be present in the dispensary in Connecticut, by the way.
Oh, that's interesting.
Is that the only state that requires a pharmacist to be in the store?
Yes. That's why some of the dispensaries are owned by pharmacists.
And I thought it was illegal I thought a pharmacist could lose their license if they...
Not there. No, not there. Not there.
Beautiful.
So
Beautiful.
You have some...
I have a question, Paul, something that we had talked about before, and I think it's really important, and so I'd like for you to help us out on this. It's the whole stigma thing again. We talked about how people may not be getting help that they need because of the stigma of medical marijuana. Can you just speak to that and to how you see things changing, how we might be able to move in a different direction with that so that people can get the treatment that they need?
The stigma of cannabis still is huge. If any certification, if any regulation board, from beauticians to lawyers to architects to doctors, knows that people have a medical cannabis card legally, if the board of any of these knew, most probably they would have the license taken away from the patient, and the patient may have to go undergo drug testing. That's certainly the way it is for medicine. You can't have an active card and have an active license. So the stigma exists.
I have a quick question pertaining to that. So there has to be a medical professional present or to do your evaluation. Is that medical professional allowed to even have a medical card then at all?
No, I said to you, you cannot have an active medical license and have an active, if the Colorado Medical Board finds out that you have a legal medical card and you're practicing medicine with an active license, they will make you give in your card. They will give you notice to give up your card. They may do drug testing or whatever, but you cannot have an active license and have an active legal medical. You can't legally use cannabis and practice medicine. And that's pretty much the way it is for most boards.
Yeah, that's like saying, if a doctor had surgery, he can't take a hydrocodone for the pain.
No, but the hydrocodone is legal because it's been tested. It's legally state. It's not legally federally, and it's a Schedule I drug. You may have a prescription for Marinol, but you don't get a prescription for cannabis. So that's the ruling, and the testing that they do still is there's a degree saying that you may be impaired or whatever. It's not true at all, but the idea, once again, we get into the stigma and we get into the fight over nanogram levels and when you last took it and so on and so forth. So there's a big stigma, and it's going to be something the employers are going to use over the heads of the employees as well. And until the research is there and we move forward with this and we can quantify it, and then we do a public relations firm does the different faces of cannabis users, that's what's going to change minds. And even then, it's going to be very slow.
In your opinion, who's the leading deity right now in that research? Is there anybody that's getting a jump on the gun that's already working with the government that people can reach out to and see how that research is going? Or is that just information that's still coming out as they're deciding?
No, there's 9 studies that are going on in Colorado that is being funded by some of the money that was made in the Colorado business. PTSD, pain study, epilepsy study, a few more. So those are actual studies, and those will take a year or two to be complete. But at least we'll have some good information. And there's more studies coming out every day or every week from Israel and other parts of the country as well, of the world.
Now, I want to mention this because when I attended a Cannabis Clinicians in Colorado meeting, I did not realize, and I think probably most people don't realize, that with the studies, that they can't test what you're taking, it's all just the user saying this is what I'm taking, or the study participant saying, oh, I'm taking this, and it's not really it's not measured, it's not weighed, it's not tested. The cannabis that they're taking, it's just basically the participant saying, oh yeah, this is what I'm taking. So it's not like we're doing any dosing or anything.
No, some studies are like that. Some studies will be more scientific.
Oh, good. So there are different types. Okay.
Yeah.
I know that we were talking about a sleep study that
studies.
night.
So what are the first steps in those studies? Are they like should they go into, in your opinion, should they go ahead and move into animal trials like rats and see how it affects the brain, since that's, somewhat relative to humans, or, the rabbits for the sublinguals? I mean, should we be in your opinion, do you think we should be progressing to that point by now?
Yeah, the more research, the better, and there is research that's been done from abroad, and more research should be done, the better, and it should be as close to the gold standard like any other medicine as possible. But there are barriers to that. But we're moving slowly. This is like the Titanic, moving the Titanic. Things have to move slowly with regards to this. Because you have states that have passed marijuana laws, cannabis laws, but there's very little implementation. Like New Jersey having only 7 dispensaries for the whole state. That's like Colorado has 520 dispensaries for the whole state. I mean, New York has laws, but they have no laws where they're not going to permit any flower. And I don't think pain is on the list of quantifying conditions. How can you have laws and not have bud or flower on the available products? It makes no sense.
No, I completely agree with you. I mean, I kind of see what they're coming at with the concentrates, because, you're more targeting certain cannabinoids, but even that research isn't there. So if they're going to allow the concentrate, I think they should allow the flower, because the flower is what's going to be safer for people that are first-time users, way over the concentrate.
Yeah, the concentrates, I mean, when you're talking about concentrates, you're talking about oversaturation of the receptors, building up a higher tolerance. I mean, the concentrates are not necessarily utilized, but for very serious medical cases. Most of the people can get by with lower THC values that are found in tinctures, edibles, flower, inhalation, transdermal, things like that. The people who are using butter, shatter, wax on a regular basis and doing it recreationally are dysregulating the system, the CB1 system in the brain.
Yeah, I fully agree.
Developing a higher tolerance.
And like you said, that's the people that are using it for recreational use. They're not dosing it accordingly for anything. They're not doing it for anything other than a recreational use. And
no, that's right. And most people don't need it. Yeah, most people, but there's still big stigma even for people who use edibles or flower. We're talking about the use of cannabis in general. There's still a stigma to it, and that's why one of the reasons if it's coming from 99.9% of the doctors who are doing medicine, and they're telling their patients that it's not good for them and they don't have the facts, that's where the stigma is also being built up.
Yeah, and the doctors have no choice. Their hands are tied. Because, I mean, I've talked to plenty of doctors, and when, I talk to them on a personal basis, they're open to the idea and they want to learn more, or they actually know quite a bit. But when they're in that doctor room setting, they're so limited that they can't even really spread the knowledge that even they have or that's worked for their family members or things like that because of all the restrictions. Is that because that they can lose their license for even talking about anything with any cannabinoid?
It depends on the state. I don't know too many doctors who have the knowledge nor are willing to talk about it just because it hasn't had any research. The doctors that you may be speaking to are much different than the doctors that are out there that I know. 99.9% of the doctors who practice medicine do not talk about cannabis because they don't know about it and they haven't been taught about it, and there's a bias against it. The only people that may be talking about it as a larger group of doctors is oncologists to treat the side effects of cannabis use, nausea, loss of weight, etc., vomiting, things like that. And very rarely are they using it to incorporate it in the cannabis treatment regimen. So there are still very, very few doctors, but there's very, very little research. There's a lot of research abroad, but there's very little real research to say this actually works apart from what the patients are telling them. I mean, look who drove the whole story regarding pediatric epilepsy and CBD. It came from the patients. It didn't come from the doctors.
Right? Because I didn't see any, I've seen a lot of the interviews and a lot of the families, talking on different shows, and you don't see the doctors on there with them.
Well, the doctors have sent them to somebody else who knows, and that's why they're going down to see Dr. Margaret Geddes in Colorado Springs, getting involved with Realm of Caring. I think Children's is dealing. The Epilepsy Foundation has endorsed CBD, and for some, remember, cannabis is not the cure-all. It's going to help in some cases, and it's not going to help that much in others. But in some cases, it should be tried sooner than later. Certainly with pain, certainly with sleep, certainly with maybe certain types of anxiety, certain things, with GI upset like upper GI, Crohn's, and irritable bowel. Any autoimmune or inflammatory or painful condition, cannabis should be utilized, in my opinion.
Yeah, I fully agree. Like you were touching on the autoimmune deficiency disorders. I was just at a convention. I don't know if you know about the Impact Network organization, but they hold a they hold a conference once a month. The conference they did last month was actually on the same topic, and Dr. Cohen was there speaking, and he was saying the same exact thing. It's not a cure-all for everything. It's not going to work the same for everybody. It's an organic molecule, so everybody's body is going to react to it different. But they're finding that it might not exactly help cure a certain disease, but like you were saying a lot, it helps manage the symptoms of what's going on in the body.
Remember that cannabis is about homeostasis. Homeostasis means balance at the cellular level. If you think of thyroid hormone, that gets food into the cells and regulates nutrition and metabolism at that point, so you have fuel to live on. With regards to cannabis, you're talking about homeostasis or balance at the cellular level. So if you have inflammation, or if you have pain, or you have epilepsy, or you have migraines, or you have irritable bowel syndrome, all of these conditions is where homeostasis is out of whack, and that's why you take in cannabis from the outside. Remember, we make cannabis inside. Anandamide and 2-AG are cannabis substances that we manufacture. We have receptors in our body that accept cannabis. That's why the cannabis we take from the outside, the THC, CBD, the other cannabinoids, find a receptor to go do their actions. That's why you get high by THC, because of the actions of the cannabis on the CB1 receptors in certain areas of the brain. So it's a natural occurring substance. It's an herb, and all mammals manufacture it to begin with, and there's a theory about the endogenous cannabis deficiency syndrome, so that as people age and get sick with chronic illnesses, they have less anandamide and less 2-AG, and therefore they need to take it in from the outside in lower dose. Less is more in this type of case.
So you were touching on some of the more recent studies. Is there anything that you've noticed outside of the states? Because here in the states, we have different restrictions that people would be surprised to know about. That it's like what I can envision is that there are things out there beyond our borders that we have no idea about that has already been discovered with the use of medical cannabis.
All right, the things that are going out there where things are really exciting and heating up, all right, are the uses regarding opiates and pain and opiate withdrawal, harm reduction for heroin, alcoholism, things like that. So you have that being investigated. Opiates, the problem could be cut in half with regards if they incorporated cannabis into the mix. So that's coming. The use of in Alzheimer's disease, whether active Alzheimer's and quality of life or possible prevention and slowing the process down, because it's a neuroprotective. Investigation is there. Parkinson's is another one where things are being looked at. Autoimmune, any inflammatory condition, things are being looked at and people should be considered. Insomnia, it's being investigated and already being utilized. Anxiety, CBD and anxiety is a good thing to look at and to also see that happening as well. So there's a host of these areas where, especially Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, those type of new advances in cancer research, what the dosing should be, what the ratio should be. Those things are coming and are already here regarding pain, anxiety, insomnia, things like that. So certain things are here and other things are coming down the pipe that we'll know much more in 6 months to a year.
Amazing.
And the question also becomes of why, and that's why you get into hemp, that those people who can't have access to cannabis legally, medical cannabis or whatever, then if they try hemp and they try to use it in the most concentrated form that they can get it, then hopefully it will work for them. If it's not working for them, then perhaps they should try another hemp product or realize that it's not concentrated enough and they're going to be wasting their money.
Mhm. Yeah. Now, were there any specific stories or things that you had heard before you got into the cannabis side of the medical profession that called out to you that said, you know what, this is what I need to be doing?
Well, my circumstances were different because I came into it from having left radiology, and I was a little bit skeptical of the whole situation until I did my internship under that elderly doctor who was doing it. It took me a while to understand the power and the actions that the people were having to it. But once I was doing it as a full-time doctor, just seeing patients after patients and listening to their stories about migraines or pain or bowel problems or things like that, then all of a sudden the light went on, maybe after the first 500 patients that I had granted a card to say, these people are telling me something that is not published and has never been taught before. And they're not just scamming the system. So it took me a little bit of time to get used to dealing with the stigma and understanding cannabis medicine until I finally realized that this was powerful stuff and that people need to know about it, and I was fully committed to it.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's
I had
beautiful.
to see the results in front of me, and I had to hear the stories, and I had to tell people. People told me how grateful they were that they could come to me and talk about cannabis because their mainstream doctor didn't understand it and just said to them, some of them, that if you used cannabis, I'm not going to see you. And this was back in 2007, 2008, 2009, and 2010. But I still think the stigma exists because I don't know a lot of patients that go to their primary doctor and say that I'm using cannabis and the doctor will know anything about it.
And like you had said before, the doctor can literally fire them as a patient.
Well, he could. I mean, there's a whole way of talking to your doctor about cannabis. You don't go in and just say, I'm using cannabis. I mean, you could. You could just go in, I'm using cannabis, and the doctor will say, I don't agree, and then put it in your chart under that you're using cannabis. And
Oops, are you there? Paul, I think we may have lost you there. Paul? He might be out of range. One of the things that Paul had talked to me about. Oh, there
you
you
hear
are.
me now?
There you are. I can hear you now. Thank you. So you were talking about if someone, we lost you right when you said they might tell their doctor, and the doctor might put something in their chart.
Yeah, if you tell the doctor outright, he will write it down in your chart, and if someone reviews the chart, they may classify it as being a drug addict. The best way to approach telling your doctor about cannabis is to say, what do you think? In the initial meeting, say, I heard about cannabis as a medical treatment for so-and-so. What do you think about it? 99% of the time, he's going to have a negative reaction, or he's going to say, I don't know. That's not my area. I don't believe in it, and so on and so forth. And then if you're going to continue with that doctor, then it's going to be up to you to maybe print off one or two or good educational articles by Googling, let's say, the medical uses of cannabis and your condition. Let's say you have rheumatoid arthritis. So you would type in Google cannabis and treatment of rheumatoid arthritis and take off some articles off of the internet and give that to him to educate him without mentioning that you're using it. And you don't want to be secretive, but you have to just sort of ask these questions so they don't get charted wrong. And it may come down to the fact that you're going to talk to the doctor and say, I want to tell you something, but I don't want this to be in my chart because of the stigma and a potential problem. Remember, it gets back to the point where you're talking to somebody who's a cannabis physician or has an MD degree, but was also a cannabis patient for back pain, and the Colorado Medical Board found out that I had a medical card. I choose between using cannabis for treatment as well, or giving up my card or keeping my license. And I had to choose to go into inactive status for my medical degree, my license for the practice of medicine. I can't practice medicine because I have an active card that I wasn't willing to give up and that they found out about.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I had no malpractice. I had no malpractice against me, and I was clean, and I was a very good doctor. I was just on that basis. I mean, if they're going to do things like that, they need to come and observe the doctor doing his functions. It's not like I was performing neurosurgery or anything like that. I was doing cannabis evaluations, and I was also a patient, but I worked stoned.
Paul, you're kind of coming in and out again on your phone there.
Okay, I'm outside now. I'm trying to. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I'm sorry. We're making
nice
it
out today.
No snow, no rain today, no hail. Yeah, that is absolutely absurd. That someone who is just using it for medical purposes, like you said, that just happens to be on a board, can get their certification just ripped away from them. Ripped away. Just
but
because of that.
something has to be, it's right. And so something has to be looked at that because it does stay in your system longer. It attaches to the fat cells and leaches out into the blood. It's not a perfect system, but to take away.
I lost you again, Paul.
Yeah, I know. We keep losing them. Oh no. Tell you what, let me shoot a commercial. I'll see if we can get Paul in an area where we might be able to get some a little better coverage.
Nestled in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains, Ambry Gardens is a high CBD hemp cultivator with a therapeutic line of products, including salves, tinctures, nano-encapsulated products, and now an 88% CBD concentrate with zero THC. Whether you're looking to buy for yourself or as a wholesaler, Ambry Gardens carries full-spectrum products that are available in all 50 states. With bulk oil options, custom terps, and white labeling available, Ambry Gardens should be your first call for your CBD needs. Visit them today at amberygardens.com or call them at 720-328-1514.
Okay, I think we got Paul back.
Hello?
Are you there, Paul?
Yeah, I'm right here. Hello?
Yay! Okay. So
Okay.
we don't actually
Do you have any questions yet? Do you have any questions yet?
No, we don't. We do not have any callers right now. And sometimes the Blog Talk Radio can be complicated, can have problems with people calling in as well. So, technology, as great and grand as it is, isn't as perfect as I would really like it to be. But so how about I'd like to get some more information, something we have not talked a lot about that you have a lot of experience with Edipure with is the edibles. Now, and I so applaud how they're so precise in their dosing and things like that. I mean, that is just so key in so many ways. But can you talk about the way that that edibles work and how they might be affected by different things, like in their body and things like that? Because I hear about how one person will take it and it'll take 5 minutes, and another person will take an hour to kick in. So how do you work with that?
You work with that because the only consistency in cannabis medicine is variability. So at least you start low and go slow. So edibles are much different than inhaling something and going through the lungs because it doesn't go through the liver. Every edible that you eat, whether it be any pills that you take or any brownie or anything that you put and swallow, goes into the stomach and then ultimately winds up through the liver in the first pass. And it goes in as a 9 tetra THC and comes out of the liver as a 11 hydroxy THC. So it's a different form of THC, and that form of THC edible that you've taken and what the metabolite that goes through the liver is 5 to 10 times or 2 to 5 times more psychoactive. So over a period of time, if you don't wait and start low with a dose of 2.5 milligrams, 5, 10 milligrams max, and wait at least a couple of hours, you're not going to know the level of psychoactivity that you're going to have. And for many people, 5 milligrams, 2.5 milligrams, 7.5 milligrams may be just as fine as trying to, take in 10, 20, 30 milligrams, and then they're going to wind up having a lot of anxiety and maybe winding up going to the hospital. Mm-hmm. Because the key thing is with edibles is that you have to start at a low dose, it goes through the liver, it makes it more potent through the liver, it goes back into the bloodstream, and then it's distributed around to the body. But that takes time. So people who take it on a light meal, they should wait. They should feel the effects hopefully in 60 to 90 minutes before doing any more dosing. If they have eaten a full meal, and they do edible beforehand, they may not feel the effects for up to 2 to 4 hours because of the digestion that's going on. But it all has to involve with the way people digest their food, and the fact is what's going on in the liver and then the reabsorption back into the blood. So it's much more complex than just taking a hit off a vaporizer or a joint or something and the smoke going directly into your lungs, and then it's the THC and the cannabinoids and terpenes are picked up by all the blood vessels in the lungs and distributed right to your brain very quickly and the rest of your body.
So with the edibles, I know that with the flower you have sativa and indica. Do you have that as well in the edibles? Is it the same type of deal where you have one or the other?
You're just making oil, and then you're putting it into whatever the edible that you're making. You're using the same oil or trim or whatever at a certain concentration, and whether it could be hybrid, indica, sativa, and you're just mixing that into cookie dough or whatever, and then it's the same thing in a different form of flour or something like that.
Nice.
Just a different form. And the key thing has been the testing. The testing has always been difficult for some reason for edibles.
To
determine how much CBD, how much THC, how much of the cannabinoids, so how consistent things are. You want to know what you're taking.
Is that because it's hard to mix a big batch, say, of brownie batter and get that oil evenly spread throughout that large batch?
That's one aspect. The two things about edibles are the fact is you have to get it mixed evenly in the batter or whatever you're making, and then the heat has to be consistent. So if you imagine a pizza pie, being only half heated, only this heated side that's going to get up to a certain temperature is going to be activated because you have to decarboxylate the THCA, the acid form, to make it into active THC. So if the pie is heated on one side to the right temperature, but on the other side it's not activated, then you're going to get inconsistency. So mixing it together homogeneously, heating it professionally and evenly as well.
That
those are the things.
Interesting.
Those are the two things about consistency of edibles. Then the testing of the edibles so that you know that if you have a 100 milligram chocolate bar and you break it into 20 pieces, you're going to get 5 milligrams.
And then that's where it's getting hard to, where it's getting hard really looking at it, as when it gets into the pharmaceutical world, is because that dosing is so hard to regulate in any type of way. Other than you said really, a concentrated pill form or, the oils that have nothing but an organic oil mixed in with them. I mean, in your eyes, what is the best adjustment method for somebody that's just looking into cannabis?
Well, they need to do some research. They should Google cannabis and just read about it a little bit and read about, as I said, Google their ailment, whether, let's say, they have back pain and cannabis, chronic pain and cannabis, so they should do at least a search regarding that. And then when they get their card, they should go to a doctor that's experienced in cannabis and ask them questions about how much do I take and what do I do. And then if they go to a dispensary, they're probably not going to get the greatest information, but the idea is they have to figure out, they may have to just start, if they're going to do edibles, they just have to start low and go slow and do things at night when they're not moving around and see how they react. The key thing is just do less is more and find out what works best for them. How are they going to address the issues that you have to address when you address a problem like chronic pain, shall we say, is what are you going to do on a regular basis where you're not going to be high but going to be treated during the day, at a very small dose, and you're going to be able to function. And you may use much more CBD than you will THC because you won't get high. And then at night, switching over to a THC-based product, again, low dose, and then being able to find out what's your optimal dose. And education is key, but if you go to a site called Healer, Healer, healer.com for free cannabis information. This is a site that I've worked on, and I have gotten paid from this site, but it's a free site, healer.com, and I think that's where every patient and the bartender, anybody in the industry should go for cannabis education.
And that is HEALER.com?
Yeah, healer.com.
Awesome.
I will put that in the notes for the show. Yeah, because we definitely want people to be able to...
Education, if new patients, old patients go there, they can learn how to use cannabis in a way that's going to make sense for them. The other thing is that they should investigate in their town who are the specialists in cannabis so they can go for a consult. Because a lot of doctors won't give out protocols even. And the dispensary people, for the most part, don't know that much. And you have to remember, most of the flower that you're going to be buying is going to be buying hybrids. It may be sativa dominant and indica dominant, but most of it is all hybrid stuff. And if it's not tested, you don't really know what the story is.
Yeah, most of those landrace strains that are, are the pure indica and sativa, they're way harder to come by.
They're not. You're not going to come by them. In my opinion, it's going to be a very, very rare day to come by them.
Fully agree, and everything is hybrid now. And that's kind of an outcome of, over the years, everybody was breeding all the cannabis or any marijuana strains that they had found. They were just only keeping the ones that produced the most THC because for the longest time that was the only thing that anybody found any benefit in the plant until, like you said,
and
also,
to get that's where the money was.
Yeah, we're starting to get some basic research.
Yeah, and now we're seeing in California, and hopefully, but we lag behind in finding CBD flower, high-rich flowers. You can
if anyone's looking for that, we actually have a source for that. So feel free to call.
Okay,
we
that's
know
something
of a
important.
lot of those places.
That's very important to know.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think a lot of people can get by, with that. And they just need to know where that is.
Yeah, there's actually there's several places in Colorado, and the thing is that they're new and they're just just getting their the products out there. But if anyone would like to just go to the website cbdtalkpodcast.com, send us an email. We'll be happy to get you the information. Because fortunately, their marketing isn't that great, but there are some great places that are growing locally and have high concentrate, 88.5 concentrate, like a dabbable form of CBD, no THC. They've got the tinctures with, all sorts of stuff. But like you said, truly, if you go to healer.com, you can see how to use the CBD and the THC and educate yourself, since you really don't have a whole lot of resources out there when it comes to that.
Oh, there's no question about it. There is very little resources out there, and this will give you a way to save plenty of money and at the same time use your bud or whatever most efficiently. And then there's another group called the United Patients Group.
Could you say that again? The United what?
UnitedPatientsGroup.com.
Okay.
People should go there for a site. That's another site of information and answering questions, speaking to live people as well. UnitedPatientsGroup.com, based out of California. And that's another important resource for patient information.
And this is the main reason that we really do this podcast right here is to really get these resources of information out to people, because like we all keep saying, that is the number one key, is the education. These people need to know exactly what this plant is, what the cannabinoids are, they're different molecules. They all do different things in the body. It's that education right there that I think is really going to push the next wave of us being able to get all the research done.
Right. Of the 2 books that I would recommend, people should go to projectcbd.org, projectcbd.org, and for information about CBD in the cannabis world. It's Project C. And the 2 books that I recommend, one is called The Pot Book by Julie Holland, The Pot Book, and the other book is called Cannabis Pharmacy. Cannabis Pharmacy.
Okay.
Can you say those authors one more time for me, please?
Yeah, the author of The Pot Book is Dr. Julie Holland, Holland.
Got it.
Book. And the other book is Cannabis Pharmacy, and that's by not a doctor, but a William. His first name is William Backus, Backes.
Cackes?
No,
Backes. Okay, I'm putting all of these in the show notes.
Backes. Awesome.
And he's coming out with the second edition, and they're coming out with the second edition in a few months.
Awesome. Very, very, very helpful. Thank you so much. All this will be on the website. It'll be on the SoundCloud link, so that people can look in the show notes and get the names of these books and the names of these websites, the projectcbd.org, the unitedpatientsgroup.com, and healer.com. And then, of course, the 2 books will have that all in there. So one last thing, Paul. So who are your clients? Who do you work with?
My clients are dispensaries. My clients are people who want information about cannabis. So I'm an information resource, and I connect people. So people may call me, dispensaries may call me, infused product companies may call me to talk to their staff about things. So I also get calls from patients that want to know what doctors to go to, and maybe about products. So the major things, anybody in the cannabis space may call me for education about cannabis or to know about what's going on regarding what licenses are available, who's selling a dispensary, or things like that. So I'm a connector of people, but when it comes to this, it involves patient education through Healer and also advising information resource for anyone about who to see about their particular ailment.
And how do they call you? How do they contact you?
They can contact me on my website. My company is Medical Cannabis Consulting, LLC. They can go to that, medicalcannabisconsultingllc.com. Or I think it's medical, and just they'll be able to find that company and find me. I think it's under medicalcannabisconsulting.com. And or else they could Google me, and, but most people contact me through the site.
Okay. Would you like to have a phone number or anything additionally, or just go through this site?
No, they can contact me. Yeah, they can also take down my my contact information. Is M as in Mary, D as in David, Bregman, Bregman, MD Bregman @gmail.com.
Awesome. So I want to make sure that we get all these notes in there, because it's really great to be able to offer a resource to people that is so knowledgeable about so many different areas in the industry, and that you particularly aren't trying to sell a specific product. So you're really third party when it comes to so many things.
Right.
Unbiased. All I'm interested in is unbiased, good opinion, what I would do for myself, what I would do for my family, and make sure that you're seeing the best people that are out there to help you.
Perfect.
Yep. Directing them to real results.
Correct.
And that is
very practical.
yes.
Very practical stuff.
And we appreciate that. Well,
so
Paul,
I wanted to ask you real quick. Is there any events coming up in the month of June that are going to be pretty relevant in the industry that you know of, or even any educational conferences or anything like that I could possibly go to, this month for more education?
I think we should be in touch with Michelle Ross about what's going on at Impact Network. They're having another seminar this month about, I think, neurology and cannabis. So they're having their monthly.
I believe that one's about TBI and PTSD. I talked to him at the last event. I think I'm going to be speaking at that one and answering questions. So if anybody wants to come out, definitely look that up on Facebook. Besides Impact, is there any other people that are putting on some pretty good conferences?
No, I mean medical conferences. No, not that I know. For doctors, I know they can always join Colorado Cannabis or Cannabis Clinicians Colorado. That's CCC. That's something that's geared toward doctors and medical people. That meets once a month and has expert speakers at talking about cannabis. So that's a dedicated thing on monthly. But not that I know of. In November, there'll be a huge conference here in Colorado geared toward doctors or just nurses and people in the scientific field, but the lay public as well. But you'll have like 500 people coming to Denver to be part of this conference, I think, at the Westin.
Nice.
Very interesting. Okay, well, oddly enough, did not get any calls tonight, which is good because we had questions of our own. So I'm thinking we're probably going to need to get you back on another call sometime, if that's okay with you. So
all right, that'll be great. It was fun. I enjoyed it, so thank you very much, okay?
Thank you, Paul. We will definitely be having another conversation soon.
That'll be great. All right, have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Bye-bye.
Okay, so Harley, this time again next week?
Yes, ma'am, 7 o'clock every Wednesday.
All right, check us out at cbdtalkpodcast.com. You can subscribe to the Google Play podcast subscription or the iTunes podcast subscription there, or you can also click on the SoundCloud link and subscribe there as well. But thank you for listening, and we will have this posted by tomorrow for the archives, and look forward to talking with you next week. Have a great night, everyone. Stay healthy.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Thanks again for listening, and be sure to tune in again next Wednesday at cbdtalkpodcast.com. Until then, stay happy and stay healthy.